Hey everyone, I'm Tim.
And I'm the only Luddite in the Ozen world, Chris.
And welcome to the OSINT Output.
There's a countdown?
Every single time it doesn't show it up on the screen. There's not a huge countdown, right? It's down there at the bottom when I press the button.
Oh, yeah, like I'm not leaning up to see that. Can you change it so there's a giant countdown?
I'm not going to do that ever because, we've been using this for so long now. You should know exactly how the software works.
But then I won't know when we start.
Yeah, you will.
I have a good basis of understanding for how the software works.
Now you do after you edited an episode, which is pretty cool.
That was fun.
But did you find out which episode we're on now?
It's 8.
Okay.
Episode 8. The one that comes after 7.
So 8 episodes. Dude, you know what? After our next episode, we'll be at 12 total.
Yeah, well, that's if we count the bonuses.
Yeah,
I think the bonuses
will.
are just for fun.
Always will. Yeah, and they're not just for fun because we bring people on who are experts in their fields.
And that's fun to me. Like, why would you not want to talk to people who are really smart about things?
Well, I don't want to denigrate any of our guests by saying, hey, you know what? It's just fun to have you on here when in reality we actually value your opinion.
But that's also fun. Like, I would...
It's fun to denigrate them? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, at least our first interview subject.
Yeah, our first 2 interviews. It was fun to do that for sure. But oh God, what date is it? May 18th. So
oh man, it's almost my sister's birthday, dude.
Oh, dip, and also one of your children as well recently, right?
Yeah. It's also
there's a bunch of stuff going on with you right now.
The anniversary of the day of Never mind. I'll save that for later.
But thanks for listening, guys. Tuning in. Today we were going to talk a little bit about social media, but before we do that, I think it's important that we understand how social media can be used against other people, right? So one of the stories we want to talk about, Chris found, and I actually heard a little bit about, was about Coinbase. So Chris, you want to lead us off with that?
Oh yeah, so Coinbase apparently owns a bunch of customers some money. And right now the last range that I saw in one of the articles is like between 10 million or $400 million is what they owe. Which means it's a massive, they owe a fair amount of money, and there's probably some infrastructural changes that will have to occur as well.
It's probably due to how much the value of cryptocurrency was at that time.
Yeah. And it'll also bring that cost up, and because they're getting ready for that S&P launch or whatever, they want to take care of it as quickly as possible. So what had happened was, and so the article described these people as hackers, which I don't think it's the right word, but it's close and it's in that realm. So because they got somebody to do something that they weren't supposed to or functionally not supposed to do, which is hacking.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like there's, one of the conference they're going to speak at soon is called Layer 8, right? And they believe that to be the next layer of hacking, where you actually hack people, right? And we call that
social engineering,
right?
Yeah.
So like I do believe at a very low level, if you look at the grandiose of what you can do to make something do what it's not supposed to do,
yes,
that's hacking.
Yeah, it is, but this is we'll call it low tech hacking. So this group of people, hackers, if you will, they reached out to the lowest hanging fruit in the Coinbase environment, which are some contractors, and they went, "Hey, we kind of know how much you guys are getting paid. Wouldn't it be great if we gave you a bunch of money?" And the contractors are like, "Yeah, what do we have to do for that?" And they're like, "Just give us some customer data." And that's what happened. So the contractors gave up this customer data, which according to Coinbase, they have fired all of these people and they've reshaped their protocols and they've implemented new training for any organizations operating with or within Coinbase. So they bought all this customer data, and then the hackers went to Coinbase and were like, "Hey, we have all this customer data. Give us money and we'll give it to you." And Coinbase is like, "No, we're not paying a ransom." So they're like, "Fine." And so then they solicited the funds from the customers, and Coinbase, rightfully went, "We're just going to pay out our customers for everything that they've lost. And then we're going to reinstitute training and fire a bunch of people."
And that's one of the common TTPs that I've seen when it comes to getting databases like this, where you impact it one of two ways, right? So you get a bunch of customers' data, and they have custodial accounts on these exchanges. So they probably save their seed phrase somewhere for this or their passwords. So you can go to collect it that way. That's a little more technical, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to practices like SIM swapping when you have 2FA, MFA enabled. But it's way easier depending on who you're targeting to just talk to the person themselves and go, hey, this is Coinbase representative. Your email on file is this. And instantly that enables trust, right? You develop rapport, and then you can go down the avenue and start exploiting them and then have them transfer all of their coins from one wallet to another because you're citing a technical inconvenience or that their funds were already compromised.
Yeah. That's tell me more. Like I was in a trance there.
One of the more popular stories I saw was it was on Darknet Diaries, which I hope one day we're as popular as Jack Resider. But there was this person, and I can't remember which episode it was, but if I remember, I'll try to link it in the description. There was a person who got just an Excel spreadsheet full of Google Drive accounts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and what do you do when you need to save stuff? You put it in a storage device, which Google Drive is. And what this person would do, the guest on his show, he would go through and look for specific keywords. It would be like seed phrase, Coinbase, right? Binance, and would find those, and people would save those account credentials in there. When it says specifically, whenever you create these cryptocurrency accounts, do not do this. Save it physically and keep it somewhere safe.
Yeah. So humans have once again failed in that security chain. Not that humans are the only reason things fail, but they have once again proven to be a poor link in that cybersecurity realm.
One of my favorite shows I love to watch is Mr. Robot. I probably rewatched it 2 or 3 times. And if there's anybody out there who suffers from any mental health concerns, I highly recommend you stop watching before like season 3 and you can read more about it. But one of the things they have to do earlier on in the first season, it's like maybe 3, 4, or 5 episodes in, is that they need to infiltrate this facility that has a bunch of records in there.
Oh, that's where the dude's creating a Wikipedia page in the parking lot.
Yeah. And so while they're doing some, initial reconnaissance, they discover there's not a whole lot of vulnerabilities technical for this organization. And then the main protagonist, right, Elliot, looks at the photo that they took at the facility outside, or their website, and says, you know what I can see right here? I see 3 vulnerabilities walking inside of the building.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what they are. And I think for that episode, he pretended to be like some big shot investor, show me everything, while someone created a Wikipedia page on his way in. So they looked him up on Wikipedia. It's like, oh yeah, I guess this is a real person.
Yeah. And people trust what they initially find on Wikipedia, which I'm shocked. First off, how the SEO works for Wikipedia to do that great. I'm sure the show had something set up before that, not a fake one, but maybe they had something working with these search engines for it to get to the very top or manipulated HTML on the page. But it's just shocking the way that it works. You instantly update a Wikipedia page within minutes. You can search that on Google or Bing or DuckDuckGo, and it's in your results. Right? I mean, the keywords that you used.
Yes. Well, okay. I'm going to take you back to college-aged Chris here for a second. I was writing a paper for some creative writing class, and I didn't think that I would have to source anything for this creative writing course because it's creative writing. And the professor is like, no, you need some sources on this. So I'm like, oh, cool. I'm going to create my own sources. Right. So I went and I created some web pages, both for and against me. Right. So I could have both sides of an argument and why I could destroy one over the other. But I had trouble getting them to show up readily in search results. So I embedded them in some Wikipedia citations so they came up more readily.
Speaking about the fact that, you created sources for yourself, that's actually what a lot of PhD candidates have to do, is there may not be any source material out there to either corroborate their findings, to support their analysis and what they're writing about, or to provide dissent and argue against it.
Yeah.
So what they do is they go to conferences and provide speaking opportunities.
Oh, there you go.
So that
you can cite the conference. Everyone talked about this at the conference. Yeah,
exactly. It's published. You can go there and be like, well, this person was a speaker. They were an author, right?
Yeah.
So I think I find it kind of hilarious that with some of these things that we do, especially like when we talk about academia, maybe in government spaces, they can be so niche sometimes that the information is not there. So we have to provide information to support it from our own findings.
Yeah. It's also important to distinguish that sometimes a lack of information is a result, and it's worth reporting that. But I understand what you're saying. Like if I used social media more effectively, I could get, some of my ideas out there to generate, and they'd be like, oh yeah, look at everyone's talking about.
And that's what we're going to get into for this episode of social media because, I got to be honest, I'm a heavy user of niche social media websites. Like I really enjoy them.
Are
but
you still
Chris,
on Pastebin?
So Pastebin, unfortunately, I have to be on a lot of those websites because it's a lot of dark web research. And the Paste websites you see on the clear web versus the dark web, drastically different. But, from us with our government backgrounds, there isn't a whole lot of social media exploitation that's done from kind of an active effort, because there's always the thought of like, privacy and civil liberties, stuff like that. It's very difficult for government analysts to fully exploit social media because of the authorities and policies that we have in place.
Yeah, there are some very tight restrictions about when and how you can collect information that is aligned with U.S. persons.
Yeah.
So
but again, most of our collection anyways, DoD, Department of Defense, which its primary mission is to defend against threats. And most of those threats don't come from within because they don't have that mission anyways. It's almost always external facing.
Well, yeah, the DoD specifically is designed to be external facing.
Yeah. Department of Defense.
Yeah.
But, some social media that Chris gets into, which is apparently never Facebook now because.
Oh, yeah. I haven't looked at Facebook. Well, okay. I haven't logged into Facebook in a very long time. I had a Facebook in the past. I have looked at it for other reasons.
Yeah, so when I share stuff about him, they're like, "Hey, me and Chris do this stuff." They're like, "Which Chris are you talking about?" Because they don't see him in my friends list anymore. Because I deleted my Facebook account during the pandemic because what the biggest reason was honestly wanted to be closer with my family.
Yeah.
Because I think social media kind of took over our lives during that time frame, and there was so much misinformation, disinformation going around. And people were becoming more interconnected digitally than ever before. It just made sense to me to take a step back. And that's what caused me to pursue other social media platforms and understand those better.
Yeah. So how's your Mastodon account doing? You good on there?
When Mastodon got really popular, Parler was also out at the same time too, right? I think those two kind of went hand in hand for how popular they got.
I spent a lot of time looking at stuff on Parler.
And if any users aren't familiar with Parler, it attracted a heavy alt-right conservative crowd in the United States. And Mastodon actually went the exact opposite way.
Yeah.
Where it was starting to attract people who wanted to share things about their own hobbies and interests without everybody else kind of finding out, because Mastodon was set up as a way for you to be invited to certain communities or servers. Yep. And then you couldn't just join willy-nilly. Like you couldn't see all the content that's on there.
Yeah, there are some free or open access ones, and those are the things that get you introduced to different people in different communities to then try to get invited to other stuff. But if you hop in one of those free and open access ones and you start spouting off, they do a pretty good job at either shutting you down or getting you out of there.
Yeah, and I would think going to one of these, you'd have to know where to find it first of all.
Yeah.
So how do we discover some of these social media websites that aren't super popular?
So for me, like if it depends on what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for the popular stuff, everyone knows that it's real easy to find, like, Twitter, Facebook. But if I'm looking at some of these other stuff, it's normally I'm in a community, whether it's on Reddit or someone has DM'd me on Blue Sky or something like that, where they go, "Hey, I've heard you talk about this. You'll really like this other platform in this other community. You should probably go check that out." And I've gotten a few of those messages, and I'm very protective of myself from clicking on random links that people send me in whatever format or form. Even if Tim tells me he's going to text me a link to something and then he texts me, I'm still suspicious of it.
That's why we have virtual machines, man.
I'll do my due diligence research on that link, and then I'll find that link, and then I'll, that'll open my world to all these other stuff. I spend a lot of time on European websites because they got just a ton of different social medias. It's not just the popular ones that we have in the US, and they got a bunch of different stuff. And then
Yeah,
I'll find the
if we-
US servers from there.
if we think about popular and how we know it, right? Well, the US, I think probably 30, 40 years ago was on the forefront of technology. There are other countries that are slowly outpacing us,
Yes.
right? Even
Yeah.
though we still have a lot of tech pioneers out here. So when we say the word popular, y'all, it means that US based when we say popular.
From our perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if we were in Eastern Europe right now, we would probably be talking a little bit more or saying words like Pinterest, VK, Odaklasniki. If we're in the Middle East, we could be talking more about Iranian or Iraqi-based social media.
Yeah,
Things are popular
yeah.
there, Saudi Arabian social media. So again, we're biased when it comes to that.
Yeah, Pinterest is surprisingly massive. Like every time I look at the numbers, the usage rates of Pinterest, I'm always surprised by like like how everyone is on there just doing it. Like it's shocking to me.
And again,
Um,
some things that other people use that we don't use a whole lot, because I personally used to use Pinterest. Like, I think probably for about 6 months straight while I was in Afghanistan, I was on Pinterest like every single day because I was heavy into the CrossFit community while I was there. And they just had a crap ton of workouts. And then also, like, I miss playing video games so much. There were also a bunch of pins on there for video games.
Oh,
too.
nice. Yeah. It's but yeah, so yeah, I'll start out in, I guess, a smaller community anyway, and then I'll just fumble my way to these other things as far as how I find the lesser known social media. What are some of the niche groups that you're in, man?
Well, I mean, like, they've gotten really popular over the last few years, especially post pandemic. But Discord was actually kind of a niche area, and right now, I feel like it certainly kind of is, because there's not a whole lot of content that leaks out or is found by journalists or on social, unless it's like really huge. For example, with the leaks that Airman Jack Teixeira had, a couple of years
when they're
ago,
dropping
that's-
TS documents in there.
Yeah, exactly. There's not a whole lot of content on Discord that gets cited by mainstream media, simply because you have to be invited to those, right? You have to find these servers. You can't just, go to a very popular group, let's say, CNN. CNN probably has a group that has a Discord server, but I personally haven't been trying to find the CNN.
Oh yeah, they have a
Discord
whole digital market environment that their Discord falls under.
Yeah. So it's something like a more focused group like Bellingcat.
Yeah.
Right? Bellingcat has their own Discord server, which is great. And one of the things I really enjoy about Discord is the fact that you can have individual conversations within channels on there that you're interested in, rather than trying to find a person to follow, like, say, over Mastodon or Blue Sky or Twitter or even Facebook, where they're sharing content that you may find intriguing. There's a bunch of people for it. So that's one of the reasons why
So
I
like
love
if you're
using
already in that
Discord.
same community, you can just have those one-on-ones and asides, if you will.
Potentially, yeah, because there's channels that are dedicated to a topic. So, like, if you're really heavily focused on the Ukraine-Russia war right now, there are like two or three channels just dedicated to finding out information about what's going on, whether it's geographic based, there were pictures that were posted, maybe someone stated something that was going to happen, so they all talk. And also sharing resources is great on there as well, things that you may not know about.
Yeah, we didn't mention Telegram when we were talking about non-US based social media. Telegram's a massive one.
Yeah, here and abroad, heavily used by, which I find shocking, because they openly say on their website, and they talk about it as well, like, it's centrally owned by one entity, right, which is Telegram,
and they're collecting everything.
Yeah, and so some chats can be private and encrypted, but again, you're using their servers to send this information. And one of the things, if you guys want a really good litmus test to see whether or not you can whether or not a service can access your chats without your devices, try to log in with a username and password. If you can do that from any device and access all your chats, they are not truly end-to-end encrypted, because they're stored centrally on a server somewhere, and that's where your private key is stored. So one of the true end-to-end encrypted applications that does not centrally store your messages is Signal. They're all stored locally on your device, and they can be covered from one device to another, but you can never ever recover any of those messages if you lose access to all your devices unless you have your private key.
Well, that's a good point. And if you're on Signal, you may get invited to some fun high diplomatic talks too.
Yeah.
If you're already in that person's Signal phone book.
Contacts, or Signal actually has the option now to add by username.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so that
So
does happen. It accesses your contacts, but also can access.
so I need to change my username on Signal to something that'll get invited to more chats. Is what?
Yeah, mine's my gamer tag.
Yeah, I'll change it to not the Atlantic. IKeepSecrets.com.
So speaking about the fact that you have to be invited to some of these things, there's a conversation we were having earlier when some of these social media applications refer to themselves as decentralized.
Yeah. So hopefully the concept of being centralized is readily apparent to our listeners, where it's just one single conglomerate owns, the main server that everything
It
touches.
doesn't be a conglomerate, right? It can be just a single entity.
That's
right?
fair.
Yeah.
When I say conglomerate, I'm thinking Facebook, Twitter. I'm sure Google has something that
Alphabet.
there it is. Yeah, Alphabet. So that's one entity that essentially owns all the content. They're not responsible for the content that you put on there, but they own all of your content and they can do whatever they want with it willy-nilly. And they can use it to feed their AI models. They can do all this other stuff. And they can censor it. And then so there's, the fun term, and this is what Tim and I were debating, as decentralized social media, where the idea is to make the user the content owner. So, if it's Blue Sky, which claims or states that it's decentralized, like, what does that actually mean, though? Because where we held up in our debate is, like, if you put something on Blue Sky that everybody hates or it gets flagged or whatever, it can be removed, which I guess means that it's not.
I don't think it has to be hates, because you want to have conversations on social media.
Yes.
But it's more like, hey, we know that Blue Sky, the Mastodon, you're going to use their service, so you have to abide by their terms of service.
Right. So they have terms of service and agreements that you have to sign up for to say that you'll fit within this. And if you violate those rules, your account can get suspended or content can get removed.
Yeah. So like that, in my mind, based on, and again, I have a very radical idea of what decentralization means because I've been, I wouldn't say corrupted, but influenced by a lot of dark web users out there that I've had personal conversations with over the last few years. Decentralization in my mind means that the users own the service, and then it can be moderated by the people who created the service. For example, right, cryptocurrency, good example of decentralization, where every single person that uses it, they can become a part owner, if you will, on the blockchain, because they can actually mine a block and they can verify transactions, and then they can make sure that if there are any, I guess, what's the best word to say that?
Sneakery?
Right? Yeah, sneakery. But when it comes to something like the decentralized social media service, they still are able to see this content and get it removed.
Yes. So, yeah, I mean, that was kind of the core of our debate, is whether or not that's really centralized or whether or not that's really decentralized. If there's still a terms of service that you can violate, that'll either get, the user or the content banned, removed, whatever. And I think, as we did some extra digging, I think it used the term federation, where for Blue Sky, it means you can bring content from other platforms into Blue Sky, or you can use your Blue Sky to export all of your content to a Mastodon or a Discord or something like that. Was that the correct understanding that we came up with?
And based on that, if you can bring content into a platform and export it to another, but at the end of the day, you can still technically maintain control of this content from another location, isn't that just living? Because I can go on Facebook right now, which is defined by a lot of services as a centralized platform, and I have these thoughts in my head. So I bring it from my head, and then I put it on Facebook, and then I can choose to delete that. Facebook still has access to it, even though I deleted it. For, I think their terms of service is like they keep deleted content for up to 30 days.
Yeah.
Right? but then I brought it back out. I can do the same thing with all my photos, all my videos that I post on there.
Can you port your contact list from Facebook into Discord?
Yeah, as long as you export it as a JSON or a CSV.
Oh, okay, but it's not the direct communication, which is kind of what Blue Sky is trying to.
I mean, you can still link.
Have available.
You can still link your accounts between one to another, so you can discover contacts. Yeah, so like I could potentially link another service such as Gmail, right, which is a true centralized service. They maintain access to everything, and I can link it to Discord to log into, and then it can have access to all those. But a true decentralization service is where even if the entity that initially created it were to just go under completely, since the users are still up and running and maintaining connections over it and sharing their bandwidth, it's going to stay up. I mean, that's how darknets operate, except Tor. Tor's a little bit different, but I2P, Hyphenet, IPFS, LokiNet, Yggdrasil, as long as there's a user up and running on there, the service can't go down, even if the primary developers were to cease support for it.
So in the case of Blue Sky, we would need more information about how their servers are constructed, of like how people access Blue Sky. Do they just have one server or one server farm, or do they have multiple smaller server farms, or are they piggybacking on the users?
If they're using my device to store content without permission, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
First of all.
No, that's fair. Yeah.
I could be held liable in that. But as long as I opt in and consent to it, then honestly, I don't mind.
And I don't know if they're doing that. I'm asking. Like, in your mind, would that make them more decentralized?
As long as
if they were operating similar to a P2P network in their storage of information.
I think it would depend how the peer-to-peer network was implemented. As long as it was open and they didn't control all the encryption for it, then potentially. But I don't think they're going to operate like that. So
no, I don't think that they are, and I don't think that they have intent or plans to do it,
because they're getting revenue based off of this, right? So if they were, I don't know how their investment strategies are working, or whether I don't know if they've done an IPO yet.
They have not, and from my understanding, there's no real plans for that.
Yeah, so if they were to do an IPO, a real major concern would be, okay, where's all your data stored at? Is it wholly in the United States or abroad? Where are your main users located at? And then what's the integrity of the information, right? Because that goes back to the CIA triad, which is confidentiality, integrity, and
accessibility.
Accessibility, right? So if you can't, from a very basic cybersecurity perspective, for an investor who may be concerned about where their money's going, it would be an issue if they were to do that, because that's one of the big reasons why a lot of investors didn't go to cryptocurrency in the first place. Was they said, like, okay, who controls this?
Yeah,
and
nobody.
They said no one.
Yeah, everybody and nobody.
Yeah. So other than Blue Sky, let's talk about some of the other decentralized, supposed social media platforms out there. And I got to be honest, like, decentralized in my mind, when it comes to this stuff, can refer to some messaging platforms as well, right? So one of the more popular decentralized messaging platforms is Matrix, and Matrix actually, from a certain perspective, is decentralized. And there are also internet relay chats that operate out there on central servers that people can access to be anonymous. So while it's not decentralized because it's operating over a single server, there are people that don't have to volunteer personal information, which I think, when I think about decentralized, like, I don't believe I should have to readily identify who I am sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just use the platform no matter what. I mean, Blue Sky, you can do that. Like, almost every single social media service, except the ones that say, we need your true names. To
verify and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why, when we think about popular social media as well, one of the more professional networking social media is LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's a great tool for social engineering.
It can be very, very simple. One of the things I had to do when I first started out, because we're told, and I think every government is told this, they're saying, hey, be very cautious of your social media usage and what you're sharing. Because if you want to think about Chris's Navy background, loose lips sink ships.
Loose tweets sink fleets is what they changed it to. When I was in, they went from, like, the poster was loose lips one day, and then 3 days later it was loose tweets.
Yeah, so we're told, from that perspective, operating as an agent of the U.S. government is be careful at what you do. And one of the ones they always bring up is LinkedIn. And when I became a recruiter, I had to start using it very heavily. And one day they detected unusual behavior on my account because I was just connecting to so many individuals. They asked me to upload my passport to verify my identity and nationality.
Oh, nice.
So there are measures from centralized social media to try to make it a more moderated, true place, but people find ways around that all the time.
Yeah. I did want to add to the Navy thing. One of the best things that the Navy did. So for a very, very long time, I mean, granted, there's limited bandwidth on a ship, but there is internet access at certain time. So the Navy had banned Facebook. Like you couldn't use Facebook on the ship at all. And then they started doing the studies, and they go, hey, what we're seeing is on, and I'm going to pick a random day, on June 1st, there's about 3,000 sailors that are putting on Facebook, hey, I won't be on Facebook for the next 12 months. Right? So nobody contact me here. And then these guys would presumably get underway and go away for 12 months. And they're like, hey, maybe that's an indicator that we don't want people putting out there. So now we're going to grant them access to a very dumbed down version of Facebook. It's still Facebook. You can touch it and you can put posts on there. But now not everyone on June 1st is like, hey, I'm not going to use Facebook for 9 to 12 months. And then, in May the next year, hey, I'm on Facebook again. So that was one of those fun indicators that the Navy actually looked at and understood.
Yeah, and then you could go through and get all the strength and personnel rosters for anybody that was out at sea.
That was posting that at the same time.
Yeah, and one of the things from my perspective, especially working for multiple defense contractors and the U.S. government, is you should really be hesitant ever putting personal information on a system that you don't control. There's this YouTuber that I was watching pretty frequently. He goes by Thor, and his YouTube channel is Pirate Software. And one of the things he said that I agree with, and sometimes because he's a former penetration tester, currently is, right, but he's more of a streamer, game developer right now, and hacker, is that he said any network that I don't physically control is a peer-to-peer network, meaning that anybody out there can look at my content, manipulate it, and then send me information back that I can't control. Or if they do intercept it, could possibly decrypt it, look at it, and then steal information about me. And they said, like, what do you think about telecommunications, right? Your cell phone. Is that a peer-to-peer network? And he goes, who controls cell towers? Because I know it's not me.
Yeah.
So in my mind, that's a peer-to-peer network. So going back to my original statement of like, be very cautious for government. For working for an organization and putting personal information on there. They are allowed, and I have seen this personally happen on my devices. They can decrypt your traffic before it ever leaves the organizational network and see whatever you send and then re-encrypt it so it goes in transit like it's real to the website, and the website won't even know it's happening. And there are organizations out there, and I won't name them right now because they have millions of dollars, and if they heard this podcast, they would be like, hey, stop giving away what we're doing for our clients.
At least $3 in funding.
Yes. So just be wary of that. Putting my privacy hat on here, especially when it comes to OSINT. If you are conducting open source intelligence, it's always best done from a device that isn't centrally managed by anyone except you, that you know that you have access and control over, and that if there are third parties monitoring your network, it is a trusted third party. That's why you got to be very careful about antiviruses, using software that you haven't verified first, because some of the things you can use, like virtual private networks, password managers, browsers that aren't authenticated or software, they can do nasty, nefarious things and steal your information or corrupt your hard drive.
And that may not be intentional. At some point, those organizations, whatever VPN you use, those could get compromised and then back funnel into you.
Yeah. So always look at what information they have, who may want to access it, and what they're trying to do to protect it, which if you study cybersecurity at all, that's your threat model, right? So do it on behalf of the people too.
So I think to some of the point that Tim was talking about right there is be careful of what you're putting out over a centralized social media or centralized network, something that somebody else owns. And the decentralized thing, I think what we've discussed from a social media standpoint is it'll use the term decentralized just for its content transferability. It's where it's a protocol, not platform sort of thing of how you're getting information into it versus information out of it. But that's still not really decentralized because there is a chance that somebody owns it and they can moderate it and they can do things. So are there any true decentralized social media, or are we just talking about darknet chats or internet relay chats and stuff for that more decentralized thing?
Yeah, even the chats on there, but there is an entity who can moderate and control them. A good example of a protocol like that is XMPP, Extensible Messaging and Processing Protocol. There are people who become moderators of chats, and they can remove users or delete entire chat logs. So I believe that there is a way to store data that's decentralized, but at the end of the day, if it's social media, I think there's going to be one person in charge of it. When I say one person, there's going to be an entity who has all these super admin powers and go out there. I mean, like, and if we want to let's get a little bit more agnostic here for a second. Rather than talking about specific types of social media services, let's talk about social media offerings, right? So what are some popular social media offerings besides just saying the name of a website? And a good example of that are forums. There are forums out there that are so niche that you would have to discover them on your own or be invited to those communities. And that's one of the biggest criticisms of Reddit is that they have become the form of all forums. When, 15 years ago, before it was stood up in the University of Virginia, not far away from where we are here in good old Charlottesville, right? They became a form of forums. Another good example of social media, chants.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
While 4chan is the biggest, I think when we talked about the 4chan hack in a previous episode, they still have a lot of information that can be of value to certain audiences.
So I ended up in a cooking forum that I found through the comments of this cooking, cookbook website or whatever, where I found probably one of the most in-depth discussions about drones that I've ever heard. And the reason, like how I got there was I had a picture of a drone and I was trying to identify it. So I did some reverse image lookup and it brought me to this comment section from this cooking forum. And I was like, this is weird. And I almost didn't click on the cooking website because I was like, what do drones have to do with, I don't know, paella or whatever these guys are making? And I mean, someone randomly in a comment talked about drones delivering food. So someone else is like, oh, here's some of the drones that do that. And then they sent me to there was a link to another forum and I followed that and I was just like, man, this is really fascinating. But like, I never would have found that. Like, doesn't matter what search terms I would have used, I would not have found that forum without that random comment on a cooking website.
Yeah. Continuing on towards what you just said, like you would never have found us without blah, blah, blah. Virality and proliferation of information. It typically comes from a medium that somebody has to monitor and then put it on a more popular one so other people can get to it. So for example, like I personally don't heavily monitor VK.
No.
Right, which stands for VKontakte, which is one of the most popular Russian social media. However, one of the mediums that I do monitor, well, a couple of them is I monitor Telegram.
Yes.
I look at those channels, and then I monitor Reddit. And they are constantly posting in these communities and channels that I follow content from VK. So what can I do then? I can go to VK and check out the original content for them, which when it comes to verification of information, that's one of the steps you should always take because information gets altered in transit.
I mean, that is one of the things that I love about various social medias and lurking as I do is just watching a story originate in one place as far as I can tell, whether it be on Telegram or whatever, and then watch that story morph and then get posted into a subreddit and then watch it morph and get posted into another subreddit. And then occasionally you can see fun things like it'll go from Telegram to Reddit to Facebook and then someone will be talking about it on Fox News, or you'll hear you'll hear a POTUS talk about it. And it's like, that's so much fun to watch. There's a lot of stuff going on there and there needs to be better verification throughout it, but it's just really cool to look at.
And, depending on what type of investigator you are, you don't have to have multiple windows or multiple feeds up to monitor all these social media services because if at the end of the day, the topic that you're looking at ultimately gets propagated to one or two social media platforms, maybe that's all you really need in your life, as long as it's answering your requirements. So I don't have to sit here and have a window up for Twitter, have a window up for Facebook, have a window up for YouTube, have a window up for Telegram, if everything ultimately goes to a really good social media aggregator. And so that's something you should always look out for as well. If there's a source that's always providing an answer to your requirements, I mean, that could be an excellent resource to always begin your research at, and you don't have to always find that original source until after it's posted or proliferated out.
Or unless somebody comes back and where did this start, right? Sometimes just the information is good enough.
And nowadays, when we speak about OSINTs, anybody can be a researcher and investigator because of how much the internet has gotten to our lives. I mean, it's ubiquitous now. You can't do anything without access to the internet in the United States, at least. Like, for example, I needed to get my son's original birth certificate because we're thinking about traveling abroad in the next year. So I could not have done that unless I had access to the internet. Otherwise, I would have to go to the Department of Vital Records in the state he was born at, and it would have been extremely difficult talking to someone, because even on the phone when I called them, it said, "Don't contact us." It said that, like, don't contact us, or try to message us directly, because our wait times are so long, and our messages, we have so many. Go to our website.
I mean, without the internet, yeah. Like, I've talked to organizations where they're like, "You're gonna have to send me a fax," and I'm like, "What do you like?" I asked this person, I was like, "Who has a fax machine?" And she went, "Maybe the library." And I was like, "No, come on, we got to update this system. Like, there's no way that this is the only way for me to communicate."
So again, I realize how much of a Luddite I have sitting next to me right now. There are online services that
I
offer,
used one.
where you can take your phone out, scan the document,
Yep.
and use that service to fax
I
it.
did use one of those services, but that wasn't the point I was making to her.
I know.
I'm like, "What do you mean you only accept fax?"
And I've always thought about that. Why do people still use some antiquated technology? And I think they think it's more secure, when in reality, Chris, anything sent over fax is sent in plain text.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I know. It's, well, so what?
Why don't they use encrypted platforms for us to send documents back? Because it's probably a HIPAA compliant thing,
Yeah.
right? When, in my mind, if you guys never heard of HIPAA before, it's a U.S. thing. It's talking about privacy and protections of health patients and their data. And like almost every single doctor's office in the United States says fax is this.
Yeah.
Schools still do it too. And I said, this is such a poor method of sending back and forth.
Well, so I mean, and you'll see this happen every so often, where someone will use an old exploit on an older system, but I think that there is some security in it, because people have moved so far past it that the people aren't looking at fax machines. They're not going, "Oh, let's intercept all this data going to this one fax machine," because they have forgotten that they existed. So there is some, I mean, it's not secure if anyone cares, but if no one cares, then everything is secure.
Yeah, one of the things that have changed over time is the concept of phone freaking, where you could manipulate the tones that you present to a phone, and you could get unlimited long distance, right?
Yeah.
So you could call wherever you wanted to. You could get access to certain services that are otherwise denied because you use a different phone number for that. Because again, like, they communicate with these, it's like bitonal tones, so it's always sent to those. If you know what those are, you can just present any information you want to a network because it's all unencrypted.
I had an LG phone way back in the day, and this is back when you had to pay money for every text message.
Okay, so I was going to ask if it's a cell phone.
Yeah, one of the selling points is free texting after 9. Well, there was a way, and I won't describe all of it, but there was a way to get into the phone and just change the time. So all of your text messages were after 9, and you would just change your time zone through some fun things, not just settings, so where you could always get free texting.
Going back to how networks are set up and talking about peer-to-peer stuff, right? Presenting information to that network that way. And that's actually one of the things that there was a girl who came on it was a hacker conference, and she talked about hacking, what was it? Candy Crush. Hacking Candy Crush. When you play Candy Crush, you only have 5 tries or 5 lives to complete a level, and you would get 1 life every 30 minutes. But it wasn't dependent on server time. It was dependent on device time. So what she would do is just go in the settings, change her time 2.5 hours forward, and now she's got her 5 brand new lives. And that is a vulnerability.
Yeah.
That's an exploit. So this little girl, whether or not she wants to think of it this way, she hacked an application. Yeah. So going back to some of the other social media services, especially like darknet social media, which has gotten more and more popular, and it's my own bias because of my own research, but I have seen this information become more widely available in news circles. For example, Chris shared a story from the Hacker News. If you guys don't follow that, really popular investigators. They do some pretty good research, right? One of the forums they were always monitoring was breach forums, and that is social media. People go on there and put content on it, and they talk about it, and they share it with each other. What is that? They're being social, right?
Social media.
Some other popular social media services, the most popular darknet social media is Dread.
Yeah.
Everybody, if you ever go on the dark web, that's one of the very first links you almost always go to. One of the ones that's more like really, really up and coming, it's called Pitch, which is a microblogging service. And when you go to it, it's from
also
the
a soccer field.
Yeah, yes. But when you go to it, it's one of the more old style, like Twitter user interfaces, if you will. And I thought it's only going to be up for maybe 6 months, because darknet websites, they come up, they may get really popular for 30, 60 days or something, and they take it offline for either admin personal reasons, or the community kind of starts, lambasting it, saying, hey, this sucks or whatever. But some of the really popular forums out there on the dark web are mostly dedicated to geek, nerd culture, a lot of hacking culture. There are some really popular hacking forums that are Russian controlled or have a lot of Russian influence. XSS is one of those. It's where you have to be referred for that one.
Ooh.
You can't just go on there and say, hey, I want an account. No, you have to know someone who is already in that environment and prove yourself.
So
Then you get invited.
So some good social engineering on the front end can get you in.
Yes, if you know how to talk, right? And then also present evidence. They actually require evidence. So you say that, and it could be something as simple as, I managed to use my neighbor's Wi-Fi, right? And there's a bunch of tools on Kali for you to do that.
Yeah.
So right now I have a bunch of neighbors around me, and if I were that guy, I know for a fact these people are not that sophisticated, living in
Joke's on you. I taught your neighbor how to use your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, if you know my password. Living in good old rural Charlottesville and the areas around there. Yeah, I could do that, and that would be a way into that community, saying, hey, I'm a noob, I'm a plebe, let me see what I can do to get beyond that. So it's we think about social media in terms of, in my opinion, what is popular right now for the culture. However, when we define social media, it's a place where you can go and talk to other people. It's just how many people are going to be on that medium that you're using right now.
Yeah. And there were a lot of people talking about how when Twitter had its mass exodus and they went to all these other places, and a lot of those people just went back to Twitter because they're like, oh, this is just like Twitter, but with less people.
One of the things that does happen for some of these populations, I guess you would say, especially occurs on chance, is one medium is down, where all these users going to flock to. And that's why it's important for a social media investigator, right? Also, you might have heard of a SOCMINT, social media intelligence.
We tried to avoid that term this entire episode because Tim hates the sound of SOCMINT.
It's where are they going to go? And we heavily discovered that after the 4chan hack. We always knew there were locations where 4chan users were going and talking about similar things to others. Heavily understood that after the 4chan hack and where they went. So there are locations, specifically they're called bunker chans, that you can go to. A good example of a bunker chan is InChan, where users post content really similar to 4chan that you can access as well. 8kun is an example of where 4chan users can go if for any reason their voice is being, quote unquote, silenced over that platform, or topics may be too edgy or violate terms of service over 4chan.
I think one of the the coolest things, or one of the best feelings, is when you're on one of these larger social media sites and then someone hits you up and go, "Hey, I like a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. Why don't you come to this other smaller one?" Right? And then it's like, "Oh yeah, I'm a part of this community now that I'm in this niche networking site." And then if someone comes in there and goes, "Hey, a lot of what you're talking about is really, really specific and cool. Won't you come to this other one?" And then there's even less people, but everything's talking about whatever that nerd topic is, or whatever that in-depth topic is.
And nerds and geeks, like we, because I always refer to myself as that, we get a bad rap. But you know what? Chris over here may be a Luddite and not refer to himself necessarily as a nerd or a geek, which I know for a fact he would refer to himself as that.
Yeah.
But he was sitting there for like maybe 2-3 minutes earlier talking about this fantastic cooking forum because this dude is a cooking nerd.
Dude, I love cooking,
Yeah.
man. Finding different flavors, but yeah, you're right. But yeah, I mean, it's just that feeling of like really being a part of a community, which is, I think, the overall point of social media, is to give you that community feel. And then how and where you find that and what sort of stuff that is introduced in that community really affects your views or your Weltanschauung when you move on.
People, by nature of just being ourselves, we always love to feel validated. And we want to find out that not only do other people share the passions that we do for the same things, for example, me and Chris on this podcast, but communities where it's accepted to talk about these things, which gets us into very dark corners of the internet.
It can, yeah.
And I'm primarily thinking about when it comes to human trafficking and child sexual abuse content. One of the things that I've been seeing a lot, and I know other investigators, if you look at this all, is while these conversations may initially start on very popular platforms where, initially joking about it or sharing content that may overlap with human trafficking or child sexual abuse material, they take it off platform. And good examples of those, I've seen KIK used for that a lot.
Dude, that whole thing was a nightmare.
Yeah,
man.
and it's still around, still
I
being
know,
used.
yeah.
Another one is Session.
Yep.
Session's being used for that really heavily. Another one that I've seen heavily used for that type of content, which I guess I view it more of as like a chatting service between two people, where it's kind of very similar to email, is Freenet messaging service over Hyphenet, heavily used for that type of content. So again, when Chris is talking about, hey, you know what, you discover something that leads you down these rabbit holes, sometimes people are trying to find that as well, where it leads them to organizations, populations where you want to find something or maybe even purchase it, and then you find it naturally, natively.
You got to be cautious out there, because that's like that process that I described is also how people get radicalized and how, they blow themselves up or they conduct shootings and stuff like that. So you want to be cautious when you're out there.
And it also, like, from a mental health perspective for an investigator, but looking at these types of communities all day long where they're talking about this stuff, it does start changing your opinion and how you view the world around you. So there's a lot of things you should really consider. For example, I was conducting an investigation into the protests that were going on in the UK last year when the administration changed. It changed from a conservative to liberal, and there were a lot of protests going on. And of course, a lot of the things that I was reading was a lot of terminology that was, demeaning to certain ethnicities or genders or populations. And it started affecting me in ways where even my wife said, "Hey, can you stop being a douche today and just be friendly?" And I'm like, "I didn't realize I was doing that. Can you tell me what I was saying?" And she said, "Well, you said this phrase earlier." And I was like, "Holy crap, I read that yesterday on 4chan.
Yeah, I mean, so that's one of the things I've brought up to Tim when he brings all these other sites that he wants me to go on to look at some radicalized stuff. And I've brought that up. I was like, dude, I'm so deep in some of this other stuff that if I don't pull myself away from it, then like it's going to start to change how I see everything. Not just change it in a way where I go, man, this is terrible or this is awful and I hate all this. It's more like I can see how I could start to rationalize things in a similar way, which could in effect be quite negative on my overall impact or myself outside of the communities.
And when you have a when you have a more open mind about things, it's easier to have conversations like that, where you're not trying to advocate for one position or another, and you're just truly valuing what people are saying, taking it into account so that you can better make an informed and rational decision about everything. But one of the things we get into where these communities don't want to do that. And that's what really presents a problem, where they just constantly say, you're wrong, don't do this. Like the things you're talking about, we don't agree with. So just, blah, 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 leave us alone. There are communities out there like that.
That helps tighten the community, and it increases that echo chamber, which increases the opportunity for radicalization. And in fact, to get into those communities or to get ideas into those communities, one of the things that you often have to do is to get a native from that community to adopt your language or your idea in their own terms to spread it throughout their community.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be like a native speaker.
No, it's just a native of that community.
Yeah, that culture understands.
Someone that is in that community. So we're not talking about people in the real world. We're not talking about like, you need to be from this tribe, the Sioux tribe.
Well, I mean, like they're going to be in the real world.
Yes. Well, I mean, but we're talking specifically about the digital world. So just someone in that community. So even if it's about drones and it's that drone community that I found from that cooking forum, if I want to introduce a new idea into that very tight niche community, I have to get someone from that community to adopt my idea and put it in their language to spread it throughout their community.
Yeah, if you truly want to influence it. Like, and reputation is a big thing. If we're talking about decentralizing again, reputation is a really big thing.
That's
if
how
people
you
don't know who you are.
That's how you become a moderator of some of those forums. Is reputation.
If you want to be, if you want to have no life, yes. Like I feel like you know what, moderators get a bad rap, but they sometimes do a really good service. But they have to understand that a moderator is not representative of that community. A moderator is volunteering their time to make sure that whatever rules are in place for that server, that community, that subreddit are being upheld. So if there are any moderators that ever listen to this, make sure you check with your entire community first before you decide to do something. A good example of this is the work reform subreddit from about 3 or 4 years ago. The moderator went on Fox News and had no prep and no training, and it was a PR nightmare for that specific subreddit. So a good example of if a moderator is not in charge, they are there to support the community and make sure everybody behaves. Well, excuse me, not behaves, but content that is shared on that, it abides by not only the medium's terms of service, but what that community sets in place.
So be cautious, but thank you for what you do. Because I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not giving up that kind of time.
We already have enough trouble moderating content that we have in our daily lives. So, which going back to that, Chris, some tumultuous events in our life recently, right?
Yeah. I was hoping not to talk about that.
No, I mean,
but we can. You can ask away, man.
Oh no, I was going to say, you're looking for positions.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, I'm out there. I have some fun stories. I'll tell you offline. So I was talking to a really good friend of mine, and she was talking about how to diversify the things that we're into, and the example she gave me, she's like, I have this boyfriend, but like we're into all the same stuff and we have like the same jobs or whatever, and she's like, I need that to change, just because like in the zombie apocalypse, like we both can't just keynote speak our way out of this. Like I need someone to have some real skills that are a part of this.
Yes.
So diversification is a key, is what I'm learning.
Yeah, and number one, developing yourself more as a brand too, because that's one of the ways that I've noticed being in contracting, right, working for the U.S. government, that we've almost always gotten new positions was recognition of who we were, and then other people kind of relaying that to references.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
well,
references.
Sometimes I don't agree with some interviewing practices that are going on. I don't believe that if you're looking for an entry-level job, you should have to have 7 levels of interview. No, it should be like, hey, we know this entry-level job, 2 people can talk to you, and you should probably be awarded it. And then also, when it comes to your brand, start using social media, brother. Like, I cannot tell you enough.
dude, I'm working on it. I've been putting a lot of stuff out on Blue Sky for the show.
Yeah.
And then I always do my musings of the morning. I put those out. I only do those during the week though. I take the weekends off on those posts.
Yeah.
But I do need to be more active on LinkedIn, but I have a phased plan.
I harp on him. Well, this phase plan is going to get you nowhere unless you start implementing it immediately. He keeps saying that of a phase plan. But you know what? The reason why I bring it up, like changes in our lives, is that if nobody's tracking, which I'm sure everybody is around the world, because it's probably affecting you as well, is the United States economy isn't doing spectacular right now. I won't say it's the worst it's ever been, because I think there are still, I think we have under like 9% unemployment right now, United States.
Yeah,
something probably. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's under 9%. Which, if you look at previous administrations, that's about on average when everything switches like that. But I changed jobs, so I went from being the training lead at Dark Blue to a company that I've honestly, ever since I first saw their tool, it's called SocialNet, and I've honestly wanted to work for it. It's called Shadow Dragon. So it's tumultuous time for us both right now. So it's been difficult getting us together over the last 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, it's been a lot going on
to record. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening. Check out our description down there for links to our socials. If you have an idea for a future episode or would like to be on an episode, please hit us up. We can go to our website as well to contact us, and please share if you liked it. Subscribe. And this has been the Ocean Output with Chris and Tim.
Tim and Chris.